In this video, I'm going to give you the ceiling of every current Raptors player. How good can some of these boys get? Let's find out. What is up, everybody? Jacob Hayes here with Amateur Hour Sports, where we give you raw and unfiltered sporting content Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So if it is your first time here with me today and you like what you see, make sure you subscribe to Amateur Hour Sports to stay up to date with the future content. Again, I'm just going to run down through each player in the current Raptors roster and give you their ceiling. And for this episode, I'm only going to give you the first 15 players on the roster. I'm not going to go any further down the list, just the main 15. So in order by jersey number, we start with number 0, Terrence Davis. Coming into the league undrafted, Terrence Davis has become one of the best rookies in the NBA over the course of the current season. And I have another episode on Terrence Davis if you want to check that out. But Terrence Davis has shown to be a very good borderline elite three-point shooter when it comes to his three-point percentage, shooting almost 40% from three-point land, as well as having a great ability to play on defense, all combined with some very good athleticism, and he has very big hands for a guard. This all comes together for a very good prospect in the NBA, and I know he came in after his senior year, so he's already 22, 23 years old, but I think Terrence Davis has the ability to be a bit of a two-way star in the NBA. He can become a starting shooting guard on a good team in the NBA, in my opinion. He can be a bit like Danny Green in the way he can spot up and take his jump shots from the corners or from anywhere on the perimeter. He can play defense, but I think he has a bit extra than Danny Green has when it comes to playing inside the paint on offense. He can get to the cup, he can get to the rack, take on guys, hit some difficult layups. I think this guy has the ability to be an NBA starter, and he's shown this season how talented he is. And coming in undrafted, choosing to go undrafted, it's incredible the journey he has taken, and I think that with the help of Nick Nurse over the next few years, he can help push him on to be a starter in the NBA. Next on the list, OG Anunoby. Same age as Terrence Davis, but in his third NBA season, OG Anunoby has proven to be an absolute defensive specialist. He has the ability to literally guard any position on the court, any of the 5 positions, and it showed when the Raptors played against Minnesota without Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka in the lineup available because of injury. We started with Rondae Hollis Jefferson at the 5 matching up against Karl Anthony Towns, the over 7-foot center. Yes, that Karl Anthony Towns against a Raptors team without a true big in the lineup. And though Rondae Hollis Jefferson started at the 5, it was OG Anunoby who did most of the defensive work against Cat. And to great avail, the Raptors easily won that game, and Karl Anthony Towns did not have a tremendous game by any means. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns got his, but they stopped him to a degree, and OG Anunoby is part of that. And, you know, I know that the Raptors got swept 2 years ago by LeBron, but OG Anunoby matched up against LeBron as a rookie and still managed to produce some great defense on him. And you can only do so much against one of the greatest of all time, LeBron James, especially at that time, the way he was playing for Cleveland. OG Anunoby did a job as a rookie. So OG Anunoby, defensive specialist, and not bad on offense. There's a lot that needs to improve. I think that there are spells in which OG Anunoby is an efficient shooter from 3, specifically 3. If he can get that consistency from those areas and continue to hit those shots, he can push on to be a starting small forward on a great team, a championship caliber roster. I mean, he kind of was. We didn't have him for the playoff last year, but unfortunately, he didn't play, wasn't involved in that playoff. I think the Raptors would have strongly benefited from having him, but they still managed to win the NBA championship. So OG Anunoby, I think this guy can be a defensive star and a guy who can contribute on offense. He can be a starting small forward on a great team. It's just going to be difficult because the best players in the NBA typically are those small forwards. So you'd have to find a team who's very guard heavy or maybe has the big to fit in OG Anunoby for that team. He can't just walk into any team, but he's a very nice piece to have in your starting 5 if you are focused on the guard position. He can be that defensive rock that your team needs to be able to guard any position. Give him the tough assignment. He can handle it and let your stars do their thing. Rondae Hollis Jefferson. I absolutely love all day hustle Jefferson. One of my favorite players on the Raptors this season. I love what he brings to the table off the bench. He's a solid defender. He can guard numerous positions, like I said. Matched up a bit against Cat in that game against Minnesota without Gasol and Ibaka. And a great rebounder for his size. A bit like Dennis Rodman. Obviously nowhere near as good as Dennis Rodman in terms of rebounding. In terms of not having quite the size, but still being able to get the boards over the big guys, getting gritty in the paint. Just that's a great word. Gritty. Gritty on offense, gritty on defense to get his points. He really works, really hustles for everything on the court. I like what he brings to the table. Decently efficient when it comes to shooting, though he doesn't take a lot of shots. Gets out of the way of the players. I think his ceiling is about where he's at. It's a good bench piece. Just comes in, brings you something different, brings you that hustle, brings you that grit. But he's never going to be a starter in the NBA. You know, at about 25 years old, he's a solid bench piece to have. I hope the Raptors hang on to him because I love what he brings. Stanley Johnson. It's been an unfortunate 5 years since Stanley Johnson got selected 8th overall by the Detroit Pistons in the NBA draft. Wow, that pick didn't work out very well. Stanley Johnson has come into the Raptors and essentially been given garbage minutes anytime he plays. And in those garbage minutes, he kind of looks flashy, but this guy is not great when he's finishing at the cup, and he's not a good shooter. Came in as a bit of a slasher, and it's very difficult for the slashers to thrive in the NBA in its current state, and Stanley Johnson is one who has significantly not profited from that because just he's been a bust, straight up been a bust, and I think his ceiling, because he's so freakishly athletic, his ceiling can be a decent bench piece. I just don't think he's ever going to get there. I think that if he's on a bad team, he's just a rotation guy. He's never going to be a guy who's influencing outcomes of games. He's just coming on to give a guy rest 5 to 10 minutes a game because his career just has not panned out. At about 23 years old, obviously still a young player who has the ability to grow, but I just can't see him really thriving in the NBA in its current state. And at the small forward position, you just need a little bit more there. And I don't think Stanley Johnson is ever going to offer you that. He's not great at finishing on offense, and he's not a tremendous defender either. He's just got the athleticism to him, and I don't think it's going to be enough. He's not athletic enough to really thrive off of that. He needs to do something, and I wish him all the best, but I just can't see him doing anything in the NBA in the future. Kyle Lowry, the greatest Raptor of all time in my opinion. Kyle Lowry, 1 year left on his contract after this season, making a lot of money. I think he's making a bit more money than he should be, but an all-star this year, was a big contributor in that all-star game, was playing the crunch minutes of that insane all-star game that we saw this year. Kyle Lowry, I think, has the ability to be another all-star. He's been one 6 years in a row. He's had an absolute resurgence of a year in Toronto, putting up almost 20 points per game, along with 7 assists, just willing the Raptors to win in some games. He's that winning player you need on your team, and he's shown it as an NBA champion, being a big contributor in those championship games, especially that Game 6, like those 10 first quarter points, I think it was. Unbelievable. But in the future, Kyle Lowry's obviously regressing. 33 years old. He's got an expiration date, and I don't think that expiration date is going to hit next year. I think he has one more All-Star caliber season left in him if he gets there. That's his ceiling. One more All-Star season, then he's going to start to regress. Whether that is on the Raptors or not, I'm not sure. I hope the Raptors don't pay Kyle Lowry and don't pay other guys on the teams like the aforementioned Terrence Davis or the future players that we were going to get to on this list like Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell. I think that though we appreciate and love Kyle Lowry, like I said, he's the greatest Raptor of all time, wouldn't sacrifice these other guys for a Kyle Lowry who is starting to regress at 33 years old. Though next season, I can see him being another all-star player. Serge Ibaka. Amazingly, this is probably Serge Ibaka's best season of his career. I think that Ibaka has really found his domain and he's really found his home in Toronto. The city loves him. He loves the city. He's getting a lot of involvement in media. He has found his place. Because of that, he is starting to really thrive. He's taken up a bench role for the first time, though with a lot of injuries, like to Marc Gasol. He's had to start at the 5, and he has been tremendous this season. I love Serge Ibaka. All of Toronto loves Serge Ibaka, and he loves it here. I think Serge Ibaka has the caliber to continue on seasons like this, putting up 16 points, 8 rebounds. I think that that's about his ceiling. And he can be a little bit better, maybe 17 points, maybe 9 rebounds, almost averaging a double-double. He went on some insane double-double streaks this year. I think that Serge Ibaka has the ability to kick on a tiny bit more, but this is about where he's going to stay at 30 years old, and that's fine. If he continues to produce like this, I'm absolutely okay with that. Serge has been tremendous this year, and I want to see more of it. And I think he can do more of it for years to come, not just a couple years, maybe a few years, 3 or 4 years more of Serge Ibaka. Hopefully they hang on to him. He's on a big contract. Maybe if he can take a little bit less money. I'm excited for the future. I think Serge wants to stay. If he can stay here, the Raptors are going to be okay. OShea Brissette. Funnily enough, OShea Brissette went to high school about 5-10 minutes from where I'm recording right now. As far as NBA caliber, I personally have not been too impressed with OShea Brissette this season. I don't know really what he brings to the table. Can do a bit on defense, a bit on offense. He works hard, I get that. But in terms of his talent, I know he's only 21. I just don't really see him ever thriving in the NBA. I think at best, he turns into, a bench piece that you kind of rotate into with the starters, maybe 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes a game. I can't see him being a marquee piece off the bench. There's no indication that he's ever going to excel in any certain category. And because of that, I don't think he's ever going to find it easy to get playtime in the NBA. So, wish him all the best, like anybody on this list, but I can't see too much happening from OShea Brissette in future seasons. Malcolm Miller. As far as I'm concerned, Malcolm Miller should never be on the court. Another one like OShea Brissette just doesn't really bring anything. But Malcolm Miller is 26 years old. And you know what? Malcolm Miller's got his ring. And he can be happy with that. Future beyond the Raptors, I don't know if Malcolm Miller has a place in the NBA. Maybe he's going to be one of those, guys who never really plays off the bench on another team. Like for the Raptors, he has played quite a bit of games. But I don't think he should ever really be on the court when the Raptors need something to happen. Like in a game that's contested, he's a garbage time player, and that's about the ceiling for me. He's a garbage time player. I can't see him ever being a guy that actually gets meaningful minutes on an NBA team. Matt Thomas, the Iceman, Niagara Falls Thomas, one of my favorite players on the Toronto Raptors, just absolutely soaking wet from the perimeter. Some of his EuroLeague numbers are ridiculous, just absolutely insane. I think he was like a 50, 40, 90 player in his time in Europe, just a great shooter. I like him in his spells. He's great in his minimal minutes. Just comes on and he can hit a quick shot to get your team back in the game, give you some momentum, push you on. And I think that he's a useful player in the NBA. Hats off to the scouting of the Toronto Raptors for finding this gem in Europe. 25 years old, a bit crafty from a guard position, and he can hit his shots. I like what he brings to the team. Matt Thomas is just a bench piece, though, is his ceiling. Just comes off the bench, can hit his shots. Never really going to be more than that. If he ever wants to push on, he needs to get better on defense. That is a thing that is certainly lacking from his game. Decent, crafty playmaker. Can improve that a bit, but I think that his max is where he's at right now. Patrick McCaw. This guy is absolutely goated. He has played 3 seasons in the NBA, and he has 3 rings. Unbelievable. He gets too many minutes for the Toronto Raptors. Let's be fucking honest. I don't think he brings 25 minutes a game worthy play to the Toronto Raptors. I get he's a good defender and he can hit his threes. I just don't think he should be getting this much time on the court. And I get there's been a lot of injuries, but Patrick McCaw is a bench player. At 24 years old, he can bring something to your team. For sure he can bring something to your team. I think he's, the 8th or 9th guy. I think at most he can be your 7th guy. Maybe on not a great team, but he can be, obviously he can play on great teams. Maybe he makes them great, who knows? But ceiling is a bench player. He can contribute though. I just don't think 25 minutes per game is what he should be getting. Less than 20, Patrick McCaw, that's his ceiling for me. Good player. He's going to be a contributor, just not the star. And that's okay. Just knows his role. Fred VanVleet. Mr. Bet on Yourself, another one of my favorite players on the Toronto Raptors. Fred VanVleet is starting point guard caliber already. He can be a big starting point guard, a guy who's contributing on a great team as the point guard, facilitating the offense, hitting his threes. We've seen his ability to thrive in clutch areas like we saw late in the Milwaukee series last year and in the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors, hitting some big shots. Fred VanVleet is a key piece for the Toronto Raptors right now and was a key piece. I think he was the deciding factor for the Toronto Raptors winning the NBA championship. Obviously, it's Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam, but if Fred VanVleet doesn't surge late in the Milwaukee series and the NBA Finals against the Warriors, I don't think the Raptors are NBA champions. Fred VanVleet doesn't have a kid. I don't know if the Raptors have a ring, to be honest. Just completely turned around his ability to play basketball as soon as he had his son, and it's unbelievable. Like, literally night and day. Was putting up like 3-4 points a game. Like, you could, like, literally, me and my buddies were betting on over/under 2.5 points for Fred VanVleet. Then all of a sudden he turns around and puts up 21 points against the Bucks. Holy shit. Changes the series, comes to the final, makes the big shots. Like, he made some ridiculous shots. Enough boosting. Let's go into his ceiling. Again, starting point guard caliber. This guy can be your point guard. He can be the Raptors point guard. He can take over the reins once Kyle Lowry leaves. And I really hope that they don't pay other people instead of Fred VanVleet. I think you got to pay this guy. You got to, not too much, but you got to keep this guy on your roster. He's a great player to have. Got the hustle, got the drive, got the passion, going undrafted, has really shown a lot of people who doubted him. Bet on yourself. Norman Powell, the reigning Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Norman Powell, to this day, reigning Eastern Conference Player of the Week. And what a season he has had. Over 16 points per game, over 50% from the field, and fucking 39.8% from three, 84% from the line. This guy is 50, 40, 90 caliber if he can up his free throw percentage. I'm going to keep it real. This guy could be a starting shooting guard on a lot of teams in the NBA. This guy is tremendous. He can be a star in the guard position. I don't know if he can ever be an all-star, but his ceiling is starting shooting. He's already at starting shooting guard. He can be a main contributor from the shooting guard position. If he stays in the East where guys like Chris Middleton are becoming all-stars, I think Norman Powell, if he can kick on from what he's done this year and stay healthy, he has the max. Like, that ceiling can be an all-star season. It's just a question if he can keep this up and if he can up his productivity when he takes more shots. If he can keep this consistent, this guy could be an all-star at some point. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but his ceiling is definitely all-star caliber as a shooting guard. He's another guy the Raptors have to keep. If Kyle Lowry wants a lot of money, you really need to focus on keeping Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell. These guys are incredible. Norman Powell was immense in the championship run, and he's been immense this season for the Toronto Raptors when he's been healthy. 26 years old, entering his prime. If he can get a little bit more touches, he could put up 20 points per game, no problem. Chris Boucher. Bonjour. Je pense que Chris Boucher, at 27 years old, this is about the max you're going to get out of Chris Boucher. This has been his best season. I think that ceiling is the third choice center, just if you need him. And some guys might prefer to have a bigger guy playing there. He really needs to bulk up, but he's already 27 years old. I think he's got to focus on making that three-pointer a little bit more consistent if he wants to play in the NBA. I could realistically see Chris Boucher out of the league in the next 3 to 5 years. Hope for his sake that's not the case, but doesn't bring a ton to the table. He has a great ability to block shots, but I just don't think that's going to be enough of this size. He's got to bulk up. If he bulks up, he can make a mark on a team as a bench player, but that's about it. Marc Gasol. Big Spain, big burrito. Love Marc Gasol, but this is the best he's ever going to be from now on. He's going to continue to progress at his age. I don't think he's going to be a Raptor at the end of this season. Next season, he'll be on a different shirt. He's got his ring. He's going to be very happy with his time in Toronto. Toronto Raptors fans are going to be very happy with having him on that team for that championship season. You can see the regression in his game, and he's got the IQ. His IQ is going to let him play in the league a bit longer. Already at 35, I can see him playing till 38, 39, 40 because of his basketball IQ. Can just kind of sit top of the key, facilitate the offense from the big position. And off the bench, the veteran presence might be big for Marc Gasol in the future. I just think that his ceiling is what he's at right now. I don't think he's ever going to elevate that any further. Saving the best for last, Pascal Siakam. This guy was in the MVP conversation to start off the season. The way he played at the start of the season, not before the season started. I think this guy's MVP caliber as his ceiling. He's 25. He's not yet in his prime, putting up 24 points per game on efficient shooting. I think that he's a bit inconsistent. If he can consistently keep that high level, he can be in an MVP conversation. This guy has the ability, can shoot from three. He can take guys on from the dribble. Best spin move in the association. Tremendous finishing at the cup. He's got to get a little bit better on defense. He can kind of marshal his guy, but if he can become a better lockdown defender and block more shot because he's tall enough to do so, he's in the MVP conversation. He has absolutely got the ability to do so. I love what I see from Pascal Siakam and the jumps he's made over the last 2 years. MIP last year, took another big jump this year. Can we see another jump next season? I think we can. Just consistency is key because his highest level is already MVP caliber. He's just got to maintain that highest level for longer periods of time. He has the ability to do so. Next 4 or 5 years, we can maybe see Pascal Siakam in a conversation. Kendrick Perkins said he's better than Paul George, and I don't agree, but he can still be an MVP one day. That wraps up this episode. Comment down below what you think I got right and wrong about the ceilings of the Toronto Raptors players. But if you liked the video, be sure to like it and subscribe to Amateur Hour Sports to stay up to date with the future content. Also, hit that bell to make sure you never miss a future episode. We post 4 times a week at Amateur Hour Sports. At the end of the day, I believe what I say, and if you disagree, that's okay. See you again next time.